Hi, welcome to the 50th edition of Physics 9. It's actually a milestone. It's the first time that a series actually reached this much episodes, and I hope that at this point you're still, even at this point, you are still very absorbent when it comes to new information, new pieces of knowledge. I hope that we are not actually kumbaga, wasting sessions and that you are learning so much by listening to the discussions and participating maybe through activities and learning actually generally by doing some experiments yourself. I'm Sir CJ, and in this session, we are still under gather information. The first part of this session is a discussion about wind power plants, and then the second session naman is an activity about the advantages and disadvantages of power plants. You are going to be using a whole sheet of paper for that, and maybe a foot rule and a pen, and maybe if you have some art materials with you, you can improve your output by being a little bit artsy. And then the last part of this session naman is a discussion about the transmission and distribution of electricity. So, what you might have noticed actually was yung discussion natin about generation of electricity was actually a lot longer than our discussion yan about transmission and distribution, because we are simply going to be talking about them as one part of a session. Unlike with power generation, na napakarami nating mga parts and they are spread out in several sessions. Transmission and distribution are actually discussed lang like this. Now, this video lesson is still aiming at helping you in these learning competencies. The first one is for you to be capable of explaining how heat transfer and energy transformation make heat engines like geothermal power plants work. And then, the second learning competency is for you to be capable of explaining how electrical energy is generated, transmitted, and distributed. These parts are found in the 7E based self learning module in Science 9, which I wrote, particularly in Unit 4, Book 24, pages 13 to 15. Let us now dive into the first part of this session, the discussion on a wind power plant. In a wind power plant, there is a windmill right here, and ang sabi dito was the generator is up there. There is this part called the nacelle or nacelle, and then the speed up gearbox. And then this is called the hub, which is actually connected to the blades. And then this entire structure is connected to the power converter and the controller. And the controller is connected to a computer system, which is serving for operation and monitoring purposes. The computer itself is for the operation status, and it's also connected to an output source, maybe a printer, for the operation record. The power converter is then connected to the following. So it's connected to a battery storage system, and then it's also connected to a transformer, which immediately sends the electrical energy to a system protector towards the grid to be transmitted and distributed. The blades of the windmill act as actually the turbines that gets rotated by the blowing wind. So instead of having a separate turbine, the blade is the actual turbine na umiikot. This rotation leads to the activation of a power generator, which then produces electricity. Again, walang kailangang heat input for a wind power plant. They do not produce waste. However, since ang hangin ay hindi naman talaga natin kumbaga, hindi naman natin siya expect na maging consistent ang lakas, and we actually have several days na talagang hindi gumagalaw ang air. Wind power plants may not be very reliable. Mga wind power plants din and mga wind farms din, actually they require large areas of land, because what do you expect? You cannot actually put a windmill side by side with another windmill, right? Or you're risking disaster if ever you do that. Okay, so This is the wind power plant, and I'm hoping that you learned so much about the structure so far. Okay, let's now proceed to the following. Please get a whole sheet of paper and a writing instrument, and then prepare yourself as well. Please put out your rulers for your lines, and then mga art materials, if any. That's actually completely optional. Okay, let's now do this activity. In this table, you see the method of power generation, and you're gonna be writing how each of them work. And then you're gonna be talking about their advantages and disadvantages. You have to complete the table. You'll be given time. You may now proceed. You may now actually pause this video. Are you done? All right. Finalize your answers. Let us now proceed to checking your work. Let's begin. Actually, it's going to be all at once, so prepare yourself. For nuclear power, it works by splitting the nuclei of a particular atom to generate volts of electricity. Its advantages in a way that it's energy efficient and it's also environment friendly. Now, its disadvantage is that it's very expensive and it's actually dangerous to operate. The next one is on geothermal. It works by harnessing the heat from the Earth's surface, beneath the Earth's surface actually, to generate steam that turns turbines. Now, its advantageous in a way that it is actually a renewable energy source. It's also energy efficient. Its disadvantage is that it has the ability, the capability, or potential, if you may, to contribute to pollution of the atmosphere since, water vapor is also a greenhouse gas. The third method is hydroelectric. It works by using the flow of water to turn turbines. It is advantageous in a way that it's environment friendly and it's also operating at low costs. Its disadvantage is that dams may cause flooding. Wind farms naman, they use wind to turn turbines. Remember, the turbine itself is the hub and the blades na. It is advantageous in a way that it's environment friendly and it's also operating at low costs. Its disadvantage is that it is dependent on unreliable wind for it to operate. Are you done checking your work? Okay. So if you're gonna count the number of fields here that you responded to, it's actually over 12. So I hope that you evaluated your answers properly and correctly, and that you indicate your score on the upper right hand corner of your answer sheet. Are you done? Let us now proceed to the last part of this session. Transmission and distribution of electricity directly succeeds the generation of electricity. There are times when, in the case of the wind farm kanina, nai-store yung power in some kind of a battery storage. But the usual case is that after power generation, it tends to go to transmission and distribution immediately to, again, avoid system losses. Once electricity gets generated in the power plant, it is transmitted towards the end users. There are different kinds of users and they have different electrical needs. So from the power plant, the transformer will step it up and then the transmission lines will carry it. Transformers in neighborhoods are gonna be stepping it down, and then distribution lines are gonna be also in the communities, and then transformers will further step it down so that the outlets in the house are not going to explode. In terms of users, there are different types. First one are commercial users such as malls. and we're in much of their electrical energy is for lighting and ventilation of the mall itself. Residential users naman, they use it for the same purpose, with the addition of, refrigeration. Actually, refrigeration may also be something that is happening sa mga malls, particularly sa mga food stalls and sa mga areas na, sa mga stores na nag-i-store ng mga perishable goods. Industrial users naman, they use the electrical supply for carrying out their industrial processes na nagre-require ng mas mataas na mga voltahe ng electrical energy, such as machine shops, ganun. Following the generation of electricity is the transmission, wherein electricity could either be stepped up or stepped down. Yung mga nakakapag-transform na mga yan are called transformers. And these transformers modify the flow of the electricity according to the voltage needs of the current transmission. If the area needs a stronger voltage, then it's gonna be stepped up. But if the community needs a smaller voltage or a weaker voltage, then it's gonna be stepped down. Before electrical energy reaches the household for residential users, a transformer that is set on poles will ensure that the voltage distributed is not too high or too low for that particular household. It is actually the transformers that saves our appliances from getting destroyed because of voltage. Now, once electricity reaches your home, you can now charge your phones, turn on your fans, because may power na. Now, we know for a fact though that we are not enjoying all of the amounts of electrical energy na binayaran natin, because again, there is this thing called system loss. And that ends so far our current session. The 50th session of Physics 9 had the following parts. The first one, it was a discussion about wind power plants. The second one naman, it is an activity about the different advantages and disadvantages of power plants. You are also required in that activity to in your own words, describe how each of those power plants work. So we started with nuclear, geothermal, hydroelectric, and then wind power plants. And then that was followed by the transmission and the distribution of electricity discussion as the third and last part of the 50th session. Remember that in this session, we are still doing everything in our power for you to be more proficient in terms of the following learning competency. So the first among them is that you should be capable of explaining how heat transfer and energy transformation make heat engines like geothermal power plants work. And then you are also still being trained to become better at explaining how electrical energy is generated, is transmitted, and also distributed. We just did that in the last part of this session. And so all of these components of Physics 9 in this session, and actually in the sessions before this one, and even the last session that will follow, actually, following immediately this video lesson, they all came from the 7E based self-learning module in Science 9, which I wrote for my master's degree at Pampanga State Agricultural University. Yung mga parts na nakikita nyo ngayon dito sa video lesson na to are actually lifted from the 4th unit, 24th book, pages 13 to 15 of that said book. I am Sir CJ, and we are about to embark on the last session ng Physics 9, with the session number 51 coming right up. I hope that you're having a great day so far.